very warm welcome to TNSradio.com. Gary with you from now till 11, but we might well shoot past that if Clif's okay with that. Just a wee introductory for Clif. Clif is of the WebBot project of the Internet Box software program, which basically tracks the difference between the emotional values associated with words in ordinary conversations, and therefore speculates possible future trends that may or not be manifested in the future. Clif, a very warm welcome back onto TNSradio.com. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, thank you very much.
And yeah, as I say, it's very good to have you back on. Clif, your recent Alto report, very in-depth, very deep. Is there anything that you would possibly want to highlight at the start off that's important?
Sure. Because it is global, let me first preface, for those of us that haven't gone as in-depth into this as I have, the reports divide the population of the world into two sets, one of which is entitled Global Pop, and the other is entitled Populous US of A. And it was done for convenience, but because we deal with set mathematics, set theory here, the population of the world can be considered as a whole. And the population of the planet will be going into a shift of emotional tone on the 25th of March. This shift of emotional tone will be out of the building tension language in which we are now swimming and into release language. Mm-hmm. The suggestion from our data is that the release language will be a very quick, sudden, shocking, sort of severe release that will eventually sort of bottom out into a little bowl shape, but it will persist from the 25th of March through to the 8th or 9th of October. So kind of, in a sense, this is a heads up for everyone. The building tension that we're all feeling or reading even, as we're reeling from the events in Japan, will crest, and it'll be replaced by something probably a little bit worse on the 25th of March.
Is there anything any information that you have that could suggest what it's going to be in the 25th?
I can suggest some variants, let's put it that way. The ill winds linguistics that we had projected from 2008 and 2009, which appear to be manifesting now with the radioactivity hitting the winds and the potential for that. Bear in mind, our system reports on the use of language in the future, not necessarily a manifestation. So the current situation is virtually an ideal example. As long as the media continues to write about the potential for radioactivity to hit the air and go spewing around the planet, we are seeing our ill winds linguistics being manifest. Whether the event ever actually occurs is immaterial to how our system actually works, nor can we tell the difference. So I have no way of knowing if the ill winds will manifest as an actuality, or if indeed it'll just end up being a lot of blathering and words about an event that doesn't happen. However, in the past, a lot of the events that we've seen the language forecast for those events do indeed occur. So right at the moment, what we've got is a curious situation. Our ill winds temporal marker, which is how we refer to these little events that we can sort of think we halfway see in the manifesting future time, these temporal markers, like the one we're in now, we describe with various labels. One of the labels we used was ill winds. The ill winds were going to circle the Earth 9 times and cause a great deal of havoc and death and problems. Now, they are part of an associated set that included an Israeli mistake, the words associated with a nuclear or radioactive volcano, and a very large separating earthquake. Now, the separating earthquake was actually following about 2 to 3 weeks, we think, the beginning of the ill wind scenario, and the separating earthquake was in our data forecast for the North American continent. So it is not referring to the earthquake we've just recently seen in Japan. So it gets really complicated, but basically we have a little tiny hint of the linguistics for the Israeli mistake in the global media now. We also, which was we thought that was going to be the key temporal marker. We thought for sure the Israeli mistake would be related to causing the radioactive volcano, or the association of radioactivity and volcano and the ill winds. It looks like that's manifesting without the Israelis being a part of it for that. We also had some very key linguistics for Israel becoming a pariah state, and those linguistics are manifesting with a few articles that we've seen. So we're actually, I mean, I hate to say it, we're getting the temporal markers that would suggest that perhaps the March 25th release language will be accompanying a very large separating earthquake here in the North American continent. Now, before everybody runs out and starts weeping and wailing and jumping up and down and exhibiting release language early, let me point out a few things. The first is that the way we have the word separating, it is actually more aimed at economic than land forms. Plus, there's no indication whatsoever from our data that the New Madrid fault would occur and the United States would crack in half or anything like that. And there's a further thing to suggest, and that's really a nasty thought, and that is that the release language on the 25th of March could just as easily be explained by the fallout actually reaching the west coast of the United States, because you're going to hear a lot of weeping and wailing. And let me explain real quick. Release language is when people just do just that, where you hear the weeping and wailing, the expression of all these kinds of emotions. Building tension language, on the other hand, is where your stomach tightens and you want to hold the language into yourself, and it has a different emotional tone. So I hope I made that clear. We basically have a situation where we think that the data suggests a large earthquake is going to hit the United States sometime in the near future. I would say 30 to so days outside. On the other hand, there is an alternative explanation for why we go into the release language on the 25th, and those two are not mutually exclusive. In other words, we still could have fallout hit on the 25th, and then a week later we could have the earthquake, and that would still fit within our data trends.
Mm-hmm. Now, just as we started there, just to, if anybody's not aware of actually the information of the data, the trends that it perhaps suggests, I'm aware that you started off with a dictionary of some 300,000 words, yeah?
Correct, correct.
And
actually, the Oxford English Dictionary with the definitions stripped out, one of their first digital forms, correct.
And you do away with the definitions then because there's link words between them.
Correct.
Yeah.
And because what we want to do is we want to associate numeric values to each and every word, more or less each and every word, that indicate various different components of our emotional complex that are associated with words.
Right. So here's the problem for me, Cliff.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out how you can, take emotional values of words and translate it into a possible future trend,
Sure. Let me give you an example about the future component of that, okay? And show you how words relate to time from our viewpoint. Within in all language, you find that there is slang. Slang originates, if you will, at the very fringe or outer edge of society, usually involving teenagers. Why is this? Because the teenage generation, whatever generation happens to be teenage at any given time, and we all go through it, always feels that their emotional state is not covered by their father's words. So most of the words of our language percolate up, if you will. They are very rarely sent downward from academia outward. In fact, language is a evolving, growing phenomenon. And so let's have a concrete example here. In the United States recently, we've had changes in our language, and they show up all over. Let's choose car theft. So if I were to say the sentence that I received a summons to appear to, I don't know what the technical legal term would be, but to bail out my wife's stolen car, that would be long-term language. If, on the other hand, I said, the man showed up and demanded bucks to get my old lady's jacked ride out of the pound, that would be a mid-level slang stating of exactly the same thing, and it would have a much more immediate effect because slang in our definition has very short-term and immediate emotions associated with it, whereas legal language or more formal terms have a longer impacting. So that's how we determine time. So in other words, if for instance everybody on the planet started talking very prim and proper and unctuous and officious and so on, well, then we know that something way out in the future is going to come up, and it's very big. Because our other premise is the following. Humans are funny little critters. Mostly they like to stay in habitual patterns like rats in a maze or little critters running in wheels. So it takes some impetus from universe to get them out of these little patterns, because it is our natural nature to like to be couch potatoes and to like to be comfortable in our little environments. These include our language. We may, as English speakers, including the Scottish, have several thousands, hundreds of thousands of words internalized. So the average Scots fellow may be walking around, and he may very well know internally, more or less, the meaning of 100,000 English words. Yet you hardly ever hear him speaking in that full range of his knowledge of those words for many different reasons. Now, one of the primary things that we think of is that this habituation of being liking to be habitual animals restricts us in our language to those words with which we are comfortable, and that they form a core constituent of our being at around 25,000 words, more or less, for the average English speaker. So when you use words that are outside of those 25,000 words, you're really reaching into an area that is prompted by something. In our way of thinking, that prompt is if you will, a psychic impulse that you're receiving from the future. Sort of makes sense?
Sort of.
Okay. So you're sitting there typing along. You're a pie baker. You're a gardener. You're a boat builder. You like to experiment with cheeses and crackers. You're a wine drinker. It doesn't matter. All of these standard conversations on the internet and all of these various different fora, we find that there's a standard set of language around various different subject types. So we go on out and watch how the language changes from week to week, if you will, within these standard conversations that are continuously ongoing, because they're ongoing even as we speak right now.
Yeah.
And even when someone is listening to this archive in the future, those same conversations will still be going. Mm-hmm. So if you look at why certain